Tonight I am introducing Erin, whom actually had a rare encounter this past summer up in a remote region of the Uinta Mountains in Utah, USA. She was there with another female witness, and in the early morning hours they both heard actual singing-type vocalizations far louder than those that could be produced by any human. I recently reached out to Erin after she commented on a Bigfoot Facebook post made by someone else about prints found in Utah. This is a phone interview, and I did my best to conduct the interview despite not feeling my best. I was granted permission to release this phone interview, and of course in a few places there have been minor edits for clarity. In my opinion, Erin comes across as credible, forthright, and genuine during the course of the discussion, and I have no reason to doubt the validity of her account.
Well, I've been to many yurts in the Uintas that are managed by the Bear River Association. So there is one yurt that they've told us about many times called the Boundary Yurt, and it's very far away from the others and very much in the wilderness away from the other yurts. And we never could find it in the winter when we stayed at a different yurt. So we went in the summer and found it, and there is no trail to this yurt, and it's just at tree line in a very steep, small valley. And it's perched on the side of the mountain. And then we've been back a couple of times to stay there. And the incident happened this year in June. And we had not rented the yurt, admittedly. We were just going up to test out some ultralight gear because we planned to do the Highline Trail in August. Mm-hmm. So in June, we went up and we were just going to camp in that area because we know the area. But a terrible storm rolled in that afternoon, and there was no one staying in the yurt. And so we thought, well, we'll just sleep inside the yurt and get out of the storm. We didn't use anything inside the yurt. We stayed outside until it was just too bad. But the only shelters we brought were not enough to keep out the storm. Sorry, I'm making this kind of long. So anyway, we're sleeping, in the bunk beds. And it's my friend Stephanie and I. She's on the top bunk and I'm on the bottom bunk. She sleeps with earplugs in. So at 2:51 in the morning, when I first heard the sound, I raised my Apple Watch and the light on the watch came on, so I knew what time it was. What I heard was singing, and it was coming from my right, and it was clearly vocal. And immediately, I've been in the wilderness my whole life. I was raised in Alaska. I started thumbing through the mental sort of Rolodex about, is that a bear? Is that an elk? Is that a wolf? And there are no wolves in the Uintas that they know of. And coyotes, what could make that sound? And then I heard it again, and it was crooning, like singing. And as it got closer, it was so much louder than anything I've ever heard a human sounds make. And then I thought, is this a drone? Is someone, sort of screwing with us up here? But it wasn't tonal, like, I don't know, a UFO or something. And it changed its tune as it sang. And then the third time it sang, it was right next to my head. And this yurt on that side is about 6-7 feet off the ground as it's perched on the side of the mountain. So this thing I knew instinctively was huge because it was right next to my head. And I sat up and I swung my legs off the bed and I got in my shoes, and I did have a firearm with me. Stephanie at that point had heard all three of these through her headphones because she was whispering to me. And I went over to the door of the yurt, which it's got a glass square in it. And because of the storm, there was no moon, no stars. And as you probably know, in the wilderness, light travels for a very long way. And there was no light. And more than that, there have been fires in this area and trees that are down because of beetle infestation. And there's so much debris that there's no way someone could walk in that area without falling or making a lot of noise. And this thing sang 3 more times and on its way back down the mountain. And it was so loud, Rex. I've never heard a voice so loud. And my instincts told me 2 things: that it knew we were there, and that based on the size and the sound, and I get upset talking about it, it could very much hurt us. And no one knew we were in that yurt. Our names weren't on any paperwork anywhere because we hadn't rented it. And then we're 2 miles away from even the most, capable 4-wheel drive. Could have parked and hiked in. And you know this area, it's wilderness. And so I can't imagine, and it sang till, the noise went on till 5 minutes after 3. And I did think of turning on my phone and recording something, but I was terrified of shining a light. And all I could think of was that I had to defend myself. And I knew there were, hatchets on the walls, and there was an axe and a shovel. I only had a .22. I definitely would have needed a bigger gun, but it's inexplicable. There's no animal that would sing like this. It was a tune. So that's it.
A few comments and questions, I guess, more about that. So it sounded like it was from a pair of vocal cords, albeit, super loud, and it didn't sound mechanical. It didn't sound, like you said, like a drone. It kind of had a voice type quality to it.
And it changed its tune.
So
it was not the same tune. It was singing, like crooning.
So it had a song that you could tell it was a song, and then it would change to something else. It was completely different. One other, I guess, follow-up with that. Could you make out, words of some sort? I know sometimes, operatic stuff, words can be kind of distorted, but was it more like that, or was it seemed like you could clearly make out word for word? Or
no, it was almost like it was singing to itself, like, when we would walk along sort of musing or sort of humming to ourselves. It wasn't a la 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 or a ba 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 or something like that. It was more that it was singing to itself. I don't know how to describe it, but I've never had a more terrifying experience in my life.
Well, it sounds like a good description. I was just going to add, so it was kind of more humming. It wasn't opening its mouth, or was it kind of just?
It wasn't opening its mouth. It was definitely vocal, in that I could hear sort of a clear breathiness, if that's a thing.
So it was.
It was almost like Tibetan throat singing.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And actually, that's interesting that you would mention Tibetan throat singing, because I've heard somewhere there's I guess a Tibetan rock group or something, and someone actually turned that on, out in the wilderness, and all of a sudden, I guess, I don't know, there was some similarity that the Sasquatch seemed to take notice in the area. I can't remember the story exactly what they said they did, but all of a sudden they could get some response from that. So anyway, that's interesting.
I've listened to everything I can on the internet. I cannot find anything closer to it than that. And I've been to Tibet, and that was the thing that resonated with me and with Stephanie.
That's all.
But it was the loudness of was what was really astonishing. I've never heard a voice that loud. I don't know how it could have carried that a thing that big. It would have to be huge in our minds.
Well, yeah, that sounds definitely not human. And if I were in that position, I'd also be racking my mind, what am I listening to? Of course, I have kind of Sasquatch on the top of my list of things now that I'm in the wilderness these days. But yeah, normally that's, usually a lot of people, don't even think of Sasquatch singing or something, and there are accounts of it, but it's more rare. So anyway.
Well, I'm not a fanciful person. I'm not one that would have thought that. But as I stood there at the window in, those kind of moments that are just coming through your brain so rapidly. I walked back to the bunk bed and I said, Stephanie, don't laugh at me, but I think that was something like a Yeti or a Sasquatch or something. I said, there's no animal that makes this sound, and why would a person be up here in this terrible wilderness at 3 a.m. when no one knows we're here? And they'd have to come so far to get to us.
Yeah.
And without a headlamp, without I don't know.
Yeah, and you pretty much eliminate even humans, with the volume you're describing. And I just had a experience myself, just to quickly interject, mainly talking about your experience, but and there was actually bipedal running, it seemed like, and it's, again, like you're saying, the moon was less than half full. It was at a full out sprint, and like an Olympic runner type sprint. You could hear it through the grass go swish, 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 swish. And it had a lot of weight behind it. It wasn't, it probably was, I'm guessing it was juvenile, because it's probably around 300 pounds. That's obviously a guess. And why would a human be out there, running that quickly in the middle of like 2 a.m. or what have you?
And this debris is, I can't even tell you how bad it is. We have to go down the mountain to fetch water when we stay up there. And it's, I'm not very good with distances, but you have to walk over one log after another. You can't run through that area. And I'm a trail runner, believe me, you couldn't do it. And so, I don't think it was a voice that carried from a long way. I know what I heard. I'm sure it was next to my where I was laying. It was right there the third time. But just as a side note, the times that we have been up there, and we didn't talk about it, either one of us. So it was the third time we'd stayed there. Because I think that each one of us didn't want to spook the other, or we just thought we were being silly. And Stephanie is very pragmatic. She's a scientist. She's a microbiologist. I work in public health. Neither one of us is comfortable getting off the porch. So there's a fire ring, and there's just a lovely picnic bench. And we always make a plan to have a fire at night. And as it starts to get dark, neither one of us is willing to go anywhere but the porch. And then I have always found it strange that I see animals all the way to this yurt, and there are no animals there, no sounds when we're up there. It is profoundly quiet. No birds, no squirrels running up on the porch. There are no animals. It's just deathly quiet, except you can hear the river, the little stream down below. But those two things, the fact that I always feel like we're being watched when we're there, and I'm not a dramatic person, but all of this comes forward once this happens and we're really talking about it, that, I love the yurt experience and I'm willing to go back, but the fact that there's just a little spookiness about that little canyon. You've been there. You go to that meadow at the end where the trail kind of ends. And it's just a very odd place.
Yeah, and I'll add just a couple of thoughts come to my mind. I live in the Wasatch area, Wasatch Range is the range of mountains. And before I ever visited the Uintas, I've seen the Wasatch, and I thought in some areas of the Wasatch, the trees, obviously they're downed and they're laying around, but it's nothing compared to the Uintas. I've been up there, and like you're saying, the beetle infestation's really decimated some areas where half the trees, or sometimes even more, it seems like, are, dead, and there's that makes for a lot of debris. And I've heard part of it is because of, the Uintas are wetter, and they run, not to make this too long, but they run east to west. And because of that, you have a lot more lakes, and the beetles thrive on the water. And whereas the Wasatch, it's a little, it's more normal north to south, and it's a little drier, and it kind of stunts them a little bit. But just to agree with you, it's very difficult for a human to move through the rocks as well, and all that debris. There's no running in any of that unless you're going to break your ankle or leg, or at least fall down and get a hole in you from a branch or something. So.
Well, I really have a lot of faith in my instincts. I feel like, especially in the wilderness, it's probably kept me alive, probably like yourself. And my instincts told me that that was something other than I was familiar with ever. And the next month, we did all 110 miles of the Highline Trail, and I'm surprised that we were willing to go because we were both so terrified that that night we were going to call it off.
Yeah, that's...
Nothing happened on the Highline, but we both went to bed thinking, you know what? We're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, that's common. I just interviewed another guy who he's hunted all his life, and he certain area he had experience. He won't get out of his car. He won't have his kids or family around there because of his experience. But yeah, I've heard the Highline Trail. I haven't done that trail, but it's higher up. A lot of it is, and Sasquatch tends to be in the forest a little bit lower, where there actually are black bears as well. But you never see a black bear up in the Highline Trail. I've heard people in years doing that, and they've never seen a black bear.
We take women on trips up to those yurts, but I don't think we won't ever take people we're guiding up to the boundary yurt. One, you have to have a GPS to get there, and it's way too much work in the snow. But there's a yurt near there that we are going back to in January, and I feel like it's probably as close as I want to get right now. I'm really not quite over it.
Yeah, it's understandable. It's I actually was able to research a little, and yeah, that general area, there are sightings around there. There's some, I guess I don't want to say other names, but there's a camp that's nearby. There's a couple lakes where there's been sightings, and then there's a meadow. They call it the Meadow Basin area where there's been sightings as well. So yeah, multiple sightings all around the area. I can confirm that as well, so, as you know. So.
It's kind of a spooky little place, but beautiful. I guess if I were a Sasquatch, I'd want to live there too. But...
Yeah, they pick some of the best places, nicest. They enjoy that as well. So anyway. Well,
I'm going to go to your YouTube channel because I would like to know more. I did reach out to that professor, but I guess he's really interested in visual.
Oh yeah, Dr. Meldrum, that is. Yeah, I sent him a brief email once, and he did respond back. It was very brief. It was mainly just to disagree with me. But I have you'll see on my channel, but we look at more, and maybe you're familiar with this phenomenon. There's lots of disagreements of things in the Sasquatch community, but we look at tree leans. I prefer structures that are. Well, what I sent him is basically 7 leans of tree trunks all converging on one tree. And I just pointed out, if there were a couple of them, that would probably just be natural. It's pretty common. But why do we have 7 here? Does this look like intelligence arrangements or something like that? So anyway, that's what I sent him, and that's what we kind of look at, things that are heavy duty enough that you probably aren't going to have humans do it, and it's complex enough that it's unlikely to be natural. So it's something that some people point their finger towards Sasquatch. So
sure.
But anyway, you'll see on my channel, I kind of just walking around the woods. I kind of use my own videos. If I'm not falling asleep, I'll press one of those on, and because it's kind of me just walking around the woods and mumbling or what have you. But there's some good content as well. So anyway.
Well, yeah, if you get any more auditory things, I'd be interested. There's not as much as I thought. Well, and probably that there was a lot out there, but what I could find, there wasn't really a lot that talked about that kind of sound. But I don't know what else it could have been. I do
remember hearing a story. If I can find it somewhere, I'll send you a link. Where I think it was in Sweden or somewhere in the North country with a tree. Someone heard it was a female, and they heard it giving this, melodic, singing like what you're saying. So, but it sounded like a feminine voice, but it definitely said wasn't human. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, it'll be I used to go and camp and stuff by myself, but I don't do that anymore. I always go with someone, but.
Yeah, I don't do many. I did a night camp out, and that's when I had experience this summer. Actually, just yesterday, I went back with the two other guys to this place, and we heard the same thing, minus a few other things that happened. But anyway, I don't do many. Yeah, I don't think it's wise to do solo camps, really.
Yeah. And if I had been in a tent that night, and I'm not that easily scared, I don't know if I would have made it. I mean, seriously, to have that sound and only have my little mosquito net shelter, I don't know what I would have done.
Yeah.
Not that a yurt's a lot of protection, but...
I guess it could have always been worse. Let me clear my throat here. Yeah, it could have been worse. I heard it could have been screaming. I heard an account. It was a really bad one where there was these guys who were volunteers for the Forest Service, and they would go out and do these chores for them, but they had a little cabin up on a mountain where they could spend a night if they were too far out to, get back for the evening. And so they spent an evening up on this in this cabin, and it has, luckily it's sturdily built, and it has a nice, thick door. But they heard one night they heard a loud howling and screaming. The thing even pounded on the door, and they were all burly guys, but they never talked about it hardly to this day because they just don't want to bring it up. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. Things you can't explain. I mean, I think you're afraid of some ridicule too, but I know what I heard, and I'm so glad I had another person there because we talk about this all the time. I mean, you start to doubt yourself, and when you've got another person saying, we know what we heard, Aaron, so
yep.
That helps.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks for telling your story. I won't take more of your time, but thanks again. And
well, okay. Send me anything my way. Keep in touch.
Okay.
Her adam Oran tаңдым маржанар мелери шерши Аң мен аралбатын Қанға дула болсын Орай Дайға жарта Уламын Әләм сөйләні жау